Welcome to Beat Diabetes, and we're going to talk some more about things like net carbs, sugar alcohols, and various keto products that you can find in the store. Obviously, some of you are watching from nations all over the world, and in some cases, you can't get these at your store. But boy, I tell you what, in America, keto is all over the place. When I first started low carb back in 2002, there were some keto products, although you never heard the word keto, but there were some low-carb products in the stores as a result of the Atkins craze. The Atkins diet had been extremely popular some years before, and it was just starting to fade. So when I first started going low-carb, I could find things like low-carb muffins and low-carb bagels and low-carb bars of all kinds in the grocery stores. But I tell you what, after 2-3 years, they started fading fast. And pretty soon, I couldn't hardly find anything low-carb in the stores. There were ways to get low-carb food products online, but for the most part, I just figured I had to make them myself, which was probably good for me because I learned a lot in those days. And then years later, the keto craze came rolling along. And now the stores are loaded. I don't think you could hardly go to a grocery store in America of any size without finding dozens of keto products. And I've got just some examples here. I bought this today, keto bread, nature's own keto bread. And this is just one. I mean, there are several brands. It's not just that you've got one choice of a keto product. Oftentimes, you've got several choices. And in the bread department, these are low-carb tortillas. These are the smaller ones that boast about having 0 net carbs. So, and this isn't, again, it's not the only brand. There are numbers of them. We've got low-carb cereals. Here's just one example. This boasts of 2 net carbs per serving size. Now, the serving sizes are always basically deceptive because they give you a small serving size that almost nobody would be satisfied with. And then we have this mouth off, eat your mouth off. Strange name for a cereal, but it is a very, very low-carb cereal. And that's actually going to be my dinner tonight. I'm going to do a blood sugar test, and this is 2 cups of Eat Your Mouth Off low-carb cereal. We'll see what it does to my blood sugar. And then there are the bars of all kinds. They are back with a vengeance from the Atkins days. They were there, they disappeared, and now they are back in a big way. The 2 basic ways they keep things low-carb is with the bread. They create a fiber somehow. I don't know exactly how they do it. I'm not a scientist. But somehow they put ingredients together and they create of these ingredients a sort of an unnatural, fabricated, processed fiber. And their assumption, the reason they can call themselves low carb is that you will pass that fiber right on through your body and out it will go into the toilet before it ever has a chance to raise your blood sugar. Sometimes that works and sometimes it does not. So the bread products are one major source of keto store-bought products, food products that you can get these days. And the other would be the things that are sweet to taste, such as these bars. And they're sweetened by different ways. But one of the main ways they sweeten many of these bars is a little critter called sugar alcohol, a sugar alcohol. And they will list them usually on the package. So there's a lot. Not all that glitters is gold. Let me just read what I read in my early days from Atkins. This is his book, New Diet Revolution. And he says, basically, you can deduct the grams of fiber from the food's total carb count. I call the net number of grams the carbs that count when you do Atkins, the carbs that count. In other words, they'll raise your blood sugar, but you can deduct any fiber that food may have. When I read that, I just thought, well, I guess he knows what he's doing. He's a doctor and he's written a very popular book. So from then on, I used net carbs to kind of judge just how foods would affect my blood sugar. I didn't stop there. I would test myself with a glucose meter post-meal So it's not that I totally trusted that, but I did use it as a guide. I'm a little wiser now. I don't just assume that when a product says it has so many net carbs that has to be the case or that I'm safe. I don't just assume that because a food product says keto on it in bold letters or low glycemic on it in bold letters that it must be right. I will always check it. But I have learned that in many cases, the net carbs or the keto products do better than their counterparts that are non-keto and that are higher in carbs. So, I've seen that over and over again in my life. And I've had some of you report, Dennis, I can't eat low-carb tortillas. They spike my blood sugar terribly. And I had at least one brand that did that to me, but I've had other brands that don't. So let me give you my 4 rules, the Dennis Pollock 4 rules. If you decide, I want more than a hamburger patty and an egg for every meal. I want to enjoy a variety of foods, but I still want to beat diabetes. I don't want those nasty glucose spikes. Dennis, what can I do? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Here are my 4 rules. The first rule is you should think about the worst case scenario with your keto foods. And what I mean by that is, what if the net carbs don't even work? What if their boast about we have 0 net carbs or 2 net grams of carbs isn't even going to be working for your body? Then what you're at is what I call the worst case scenario, and that means the total carbs. Now, let me give you an example of total carbs that aren't bad, even if their boast about their net carbs isn't true. These are the Extreme Wellness 0 net carbs, high fiber, and they boast, they tell you on their package that this is for 2 tortillas, and that would equal 14 total grams of carbs. Has 13 grams of fiber. But let's say in worst case, all those 13 grams of fiber still are going to raise your blood sugar just like any other gram of carb. So that you have to deal with 14 grams. Now that's for 2. That's a little high, although if everything you put in here, like let's say you fill this up with hamburger meat and cheese, maybe some lettuce and a little picante sauce. If you just eat one, you're only at 7 grams of carbs plus the few incidental grams of carbs you might get from your picante sauce. Hamburger's not going to have any. Most cheese is going to have almost none. So you're still not bad, even if the net carbs don't kick in and do anything and they don't help you at all. Now, I'm persuaded that they will help you some, but not necessarily as much as you might think. So this really isn't bad. If you, and the same thing with this bread. This bread is 10 grams of carbs, period, but 9 of those are fiber. So what that means is, in the very absolutely worst case, and all those fiber carbs don't do their job and they still raise blood sugar, worst case scenario, all you're getting is 10 grams of carbs. That's not all that bad. You can take a single piece of bread and you can load it down with some meat and cheese, and 10 grams of carbs will be your meal's allotment. That's not bad. That means if you do that for 3 meals out of your day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 1 slice of this bread, 10 grams of carbs, loaded down with meat and cheese, you're only eating 30 grams of carbs per day if that's how you do it. And it doesn't have to be meat and cheese. One thing that I used to eat a lot of was a tuna salad sandwich. Tuna has no carbs. And mayonnaise, if you buy the right kind, has no carbs. And pickle relish, if it's unsweetened, or it's been sweetened with allulose or something, has no carbs. So you can load one of these slices down, and with tuna, mayonnaise, unsweetened pickle relish, just load it up. And as long as you stick with 1 slice, you've had 10 grams for your meal. And that ain't bad, my friend. So even in the worst case, as long as your portion size isn't too much, as long as you can limit yourself to one of these, you're doing good. Now, let me give you another example. Here is a cereal, and I don't know how they do this. This Eat Your Mouth Off cereal, and it is a low-carb cereal. And it says that for 1 1/4 cups, it's only 6 grams of carbs. 1 1/4 cups, only 6 grams of carbs. Now, this is about 2 cups, so that's going to be about 10 grams of carbs. This means if I have this for my meal, and I could even sprinkle in some almond slices or some type of nuts that are very low carb, and it wouldn't make much difference. I can eat this, and I should have very little glucose spike. So that's what I'm going to do tonight, except that I'm not even going to put the nuts in. I'm just going to eat 2 cups of Eat Your Mouth Off cereal. You heard that right. Dennis Pollock is going to eat 2 cups of Eat Your Mouth Off cereal. And we're going to see if its info lives up to its billing. Of course, I will put some heavy whipping cream in there mixed with water. I never use regular milk because regular milk has quite a few carbs. So I'm going to put a bit of heavy cream, mix it with water, kind of make my homemade milk, and it's going to be much lower in carbs that way. And my 2 cups of Eat Your Mouth Off cereal, and we'll see where it goes. I'll report at the end of this video. Secondly, smaller portions. When I have a sandwich, as mentioned, it's 1 slice of bread, never a second. Sometimes I'll go to McDonald's, and I'll get a breakfast sandwich. First thing I do is take off the top. Second thing I do is scratch off most of the bottom. People watching me would think I'm pretty weird. Now, I've still got a little tiny bit of bread on the bottom, but not much. And the portion size of the bread is so small that basically what I'm mostly getting is the meat and the sausage, the cheese, the egg, and I do just fine with that. So let's talk a little bit about the sugar alcohols. And I want to read something Jenny Rule wrote in her book, Blood Sugar 101, about sugar alcohols. She says sugar alcohols are lab-created carbohydrates that may or may not break down into glucose in your body depending on whether you have the enzymes needed to digest them. If you don't, they won't raise your blood sugar, but they may give you horrible gas and diarrhea. So, doesn't sound too good. What she's saying is either they'll raise your blood sugar or they'll give you the runs, most likely one or the other. However, that's not necessarily true in my book if you eat them moderately. But if you're eating a lot of sugar alcohols, and these low-carb bars have sugar alcohols usually, a lot of sugar alcohols in keto store products, there's a good chance you won't have any problems with constipation. Your problem will be the other way. You'll be having diarrhea day after day, and you'll be using a whole lot of toilet paper to deal with your issues from the sugar alcohols. A rule I have about sugar alcohols is don't count on the fact that every one of those sugar alcohols won't raise blood sugar. Chances are at least about half of them will. So if something boasts about having a lot of sugar alcohols and they reduce it for the net carbs, I would take about half of those and add it back in, because sugar alcohols are not a sure thing at all. They can raise blood sugar. And it just depends on the individual. So whether they raise your blood sugar or give you diarrhea or you can just get by with it is going to be kind of for you to figure out. So rule number 3 is cut the sugar alcohols in half when you're trying to determine how much these are going to affect blood sugar. If they say we've got 10 grams of sugar alcohols, you need to say, well, probably 5 of them are going to affect my blood sugar. Maybe 5 won't. That's just a good rule of thumb. It doesn't mean it'll be exactly that way. And of course, the 4th rule, and really the most important of all, is test yourself after you eat things like this and see what they do. If they work for you, you've gained a friend, something you can enjoy, something that's good and tastes good, and it makes your diet easier. Before my meal, my glucose read 103. 1 hour after finishing my bowl of Eat Your Mouth Off cereal, my blood sugar read 112 milligrams per deciliter. 2 hours after eating it read 113. So no serious spike for sure, but a bit disappointing that I was still in a holding pattern 2 hours after that meal. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.